It was weeks now since Jack had left her. She had only to turn her eyes towards the battered, square, white-topped table taking up the middle of the floor to see him standing there, flinging his things into the suitcase and shouting as loudly as herself, "I'd marry her if I hated her guts. I'd marry her to spite you." Yes, he had said that. Any of the others could have said it, and it wouldn't have mattered a damn, for they'd all gone their own road anyway. But not Jack. Jack was hers, and he'd always been a good lad, a God-fearing lad. And that's where the mystery and bepuzzlement of it all came in. He may not have gone to his duties every week, but he had gone to his mass on a Sunday. At least, up to 2 years ago. She'd got at him when he'd first stopped going, but then left him alone. Would she, though, have left him alone had she known the reason for him staying away? No, by God, she wouldn't. And when she had got to know, it had been thrust on her like a bolt from the blue. All the neighbourhood had been laughing up their sleeves at what was going on, and not one of them daring to tell her. And they were wise, for she would have laid out anyone who dared to come and say that her lad, her Jack, was courting a hallelujah on the sly. For whoever heard of a Catholic taking up with a Salvation Army piece? No one, until her own flesh had to do it. And there he was, married to her now, and living in the far end of the town, so she'd heard. But even so, she daren't for the life of her put her nose outside the door after she'd come from first Mass on Sunday, in case she should see him heading the Salvation Army band down the street and knocking hell out of the big drum. He was capable of anything, she knew, and since he was now in the Salvation family's toils, God alone knew what they'd egg him on to. Oh, the pains of life, the humiliation. She lay here now doing what she'd always longed to do. Lie in. Her body was tired and wanting to rest, but her mind was more active than it had been in her life, for now it had time to think, and things to think about. It urged her to her feet, and she sat on the side of the bed and scratched the moist flesh under her great wobbling breasts. Her desire for rest had been fulfilled, but now it lay heavy on her heart and filled her with longing for the days when desires were all she'd had, and their fulfillment a mirage. The tin clock on the mantelpiece struck 7. There was another half hour before she need call Phil. She glanced towards the bedroom door, and it occurred to her yet once again that being alone in the house with Phil was like being with a stranger, or at best, a lodger. An exact and finicky lodger who made you feel that he was staying with you only as long as was absolutely necessary. The thought had the power to frighten her, and she rose from the bed and shambled into the scullery. Having put the kettle on the gas stove, she came back into the kitchen and thrust her knickers and petticoat into the old black-leaded oven to warm, then lit the kitchen fire before taking the ashes out. This done, she dressed herself and washed round her face. She did all this with the blind down, but when finally she had made herself a pot of strong black tea and had drunk 3 large cups from it, she went to the window and, pulling up the paper blind, looked out into the street. It was a pleasant morning, she reflected, with a nip of autumn in the air. She'd go out and wash the steps down, for if she left them to the Lavys, the Quigleys, or to Miss Harper, they'd never be done. They were supposed to take their turn, but damn a drop of water they put on them from one year's end to another. The doing of the steps in the tenement had always been left to her and Liz Shaughnessy. But the Shaughnesseys were gone, and didn't she know it, for she missed them in more ways than one. The family in the attics now was about as pally as a Jerusalem Jew to an Arab. She went to the scullery again, returning with a bucket of water. But as she passed the window, she halted abruptly, and her wrinkled lips pressed themselves together as she squinted between the narrow aperture of her curtains to the far side of the street. Then, putting down the bucket, none too quietly, she exclaimed aloud, "Be God! If I went to doom at 2:30 in the morning, Lady Flannagan..."